The Train Sim World franchise has been around for 8 years now, and let's just say that it has not been a smooth ride at all, no thanks to the business practices of its own developer. In any case, I thought it was about time I went back to where it all began, by reviewing the Sandpatch grade route. Despite my general lack of interest in US freight routes, I found myself taking a little bit of a liking to SPG upon revisiting it in late 2025. I should also mention that, because I hate cutting to a different shot until the entire train has passed, regardless of its length, this video might have less run-by shots of trains passing by. Sometimes, I might speed up the clips just to minimize the periods of awkward silence. Sandpatch Grade was the very first route in the TSW franchise, being released in March 2017. It was later remastered and included in the Train Sim World 2 package of August 2020, alongside a pair of new routes, namely Schnellfahrstrecke Köln-Aachen and the London Underground Bakerloo line. In terms of route coverage, you get 52 miles, or 84 kilometers, of track from Cumberland, Maryland to Rockwood, Pennsylvania, in former Baltimore and Ohio territory. Cumberland is at the southern end, while Rockwood is at the northern end. This is a non-linear route with two branches. One leaves the main line at Salisbury Junction and goes down to Shaw Mine, while the other branches off at Rockwood and goes up to Rockwood Mine. These days, the route is available as a standalone add-on for Train Sim World 6, costing $43.59 NZD at full price. I still remember the first trailer for this route that Dovetail released in late 2016, as part of some video where a few DTG staffers were green screened onto the TS Classic version of the Marseille to Avignon route. Honestly, I thought the whole video was rather cringeworthy, especially when the lead presenter referred to it as a special show, but regardless, Sandpatch Grade was described as being very well known amongst American rail fans. That may be true, for all I know, but I had never even heard of this route until it was announced as coming to Train Sim World, so I have no personal connection to it. On the motive power scene, the base route includes 3 diesel locomotives, namely the EMD GP38-2, EMD SD40-2, and General Electric AC40-8W, with each locomotive supplied in either YN2 or YN3B liveries. In saying that, the game will always spawn the YN3B livery for the GP38-2 even when you select YN2, and I find this rather annoying. The two EMD types have a very similar looking cab, with a control stand that reminds me of New Zealand's DBR, DC, and DFT/DFB locomotives. But the General Electric AC4400CW is very different, as her controls are laid out on a desk in front of the driver, rather than the traditional control stand seen in the EMD cabs. Dovetail only modelled one variant each for the GP38-2 and SD40-2, which is annoying because not all examples of those classes on CSX's roster have nose-mounted headlights. Case in point, the infamous Crazy 8s. And yet, these in-game models will often load with numbers that are incorrect for the variant that's been modelled, as was the case with these two locomotives, 2795 and 8455. I think the CSX GP38-2 and SD40-2 that we get in TSW are meant to be ex-Seaboard Coastline variants, but don't quote me on that. Thinking back to Crazy 8s for a moment, here's a shameless plug for the Citation Needed episode in which Tom Scott and the technical difficulties, of all people, discuss the incident. In addition to the 3 locomotives included with the base route, you can also get the General Electric C40-8W as a separately sold add-on, first released in November 2020. In real life, the Dash 8 was first built in 1989, and, to my eyes at least, looks very similar to the AC4400CW, of which the first example was built in 1993. In this TSW add-on, the Dash 8 is only supplied in the YN2 livery, and the colours look a bit more faded than they do on the AC44, while the X-Conrail variant, with headlights placed above the cab window, is not included for whatever reason. The version of this add-on that's compatible with TSW6 costs 29 New Zealand dollars at full price, which is quite expensive for a locomotive add-on, if you ask me. In November 2017, Dovetail also released the EMD GP40-2 as an add-on for Sandpatch grade, but I can't show you the GP40-2 in this video because I never owned the thing myself, and, for whatever reason, she was never ported over to any TSW sequels, not even TSW2. Thinking back to the C40-8W, I am aware of the Santa Fe Warbonnet variant that comes with High Iron Simulations' new gameplay pack for Cajon Pass, but don't expect a review of either add-on on this channel. For one thing, I have no interest in revisiting Cajon Pass, and for another, I'm wary of HIS based on what I've heard about their TS Classic routes. Don't quote me on this, but apparently some of the included wagons are too modern for what's supposed to be a 90s-era Santa Fe rail scene. The Warbonnet Dash 8 is a lazy edit of the existing CSX model, and the Bluebonnet SD40-2 has the number range from the Snoot Nose engines, which have not been modelled. Go figure. Considering how long it's been since the gameplay pack was first announced, I thought HIS would have used that time to make sure it could be as good as possible. One last thing about HIS. I can't help thinking that, based on the screenshots we've seen, that their GP60M and GP60B models could be better, and I'm not at all happy with their decision to omit the Warbonnet GP60s and save them for another future gameplay pack. I've heard of greedy developers, but this is ridiculous. On the surface, the AC4400 CW looks very similar to the older C40-8W, but you'll see numerous differences between the two if you look closer. One of the first things I noticed was the details on the left-hand side just behind the cab, although I forget what the large box on the running board is called. Another major difference can be found in the cab, where the Dash 8 still uses analog gauges, while the AC4400 CW has digital screens. 6 different types of freight wagon are included with the route. These are the 53-foot well wagon for double-stack containers, 89-foot auto rack, 3-bay grain hopper, Bethgon 2 coal gondola, 50-foot boxcar, and 30,500-gallon tanker wagon. My favourite from that selection is perhaps the auto rack, simply because I like how you can open the huge doors at each end and step inside. In real life, an Amtrak service also runs over the Cumberland to Rockwood section, but the only Amtrak rolling stock we've got in TSW is for the New York to Trenton and Boston to Providence routes. As for the name of the particular service that runs over Sandpatch grade, that's the Capital Limited, which runs from Washington DC to Chicago, Illinois. It's absolutely ridiculous that, even after all this time, we still haven't got a P42DC Genesis locomotive with Superliner coaches as an official TSW add-on. As for anything Dovetail did make for post-release DLC other than the Dash 8, there was this borderline half-assed CSX Stealth reskin, first released in February 2022 and built on the SD40 that comes with the Clinchfield Railroad add-on. Feel free to watch my updated review on the New Journeys expansion pack for more details on why I think the CSX Stealth SD40 is one of the laziest American add-ons in TSW. As for the overall locomotive audio, it's pretty mediocre in my opinion. For whatever reason, Dovetail used the same generic horn sound across all 4 of the main CSX locomotives, and it has never been updated. Another thing I don't like is the bell always activating automatically whenever you blast the horn, although, to be fair, that is realistic. and to be fair to the Stealth SD40, at least this thing has a much better default horn sound than the other CSX locomotives. Timetable mode features 22 playable services for the GP38-2, 54 services for the SD40-2, 57 for the AC4400CW, and 48 for the C40-8W, although the -8 merely substitutes into some of the existing services instead of adding any new ones of her own. Although I like the scenery on Sandpatch Grade, for the most part, I don't normally drive on this route myself due to most of the services being over an hour long. Incidentally, the service I tried for this video took 2 hours and 21 minutes to complete. It didn't help that a sizable part of the journey was spent crawling up a 1 in 62 to 1 in 67 grade at only 15 miles per hour, even though I had the throttle in notch 8, and there were 2 SD40-2s at the back acting as bankers. When going downhill, it can be really difficult to keep the train under control if you're not used to heavier freight trains. As for what you're able to do on this route, the jobs include point A to B or B to A runs over the full route with coal, manifest, intermodal or auto-rack trains, loading coal wagons at Salisbury or Rockwood mines, arranging banker locomotives at Cumberland Yard, and running those bankers light engine back down the hill after they've assisted a train. As much as I like the addition of shunting services in Cumberland, the yard itself still feels like it could be a lot busier, as there are an awful lot of empty tracks in the yard for most of the day. For some reason, the SD40-2 doesn't appear in the selection list for timetable mode, and only the Stealth SD40 is there instead. I have no idea what could be causing this problem, since there doesn't seem to be any issues with the normal SD40-2, as she still appeared as normal when I spawned on foot. On multiple occasions, I even saw the Training Centre SD40-2 appear on an AI service, when I'm pretty sure this is not supposed to happen. As for how to set up these locomotives, it's relatively easy. In the case of the SD40-2 and GP38-2, you have to insert the reverser handle, make sure the engine run, generator field and control and fuel pump switches are set to on, then set the cut-off valve to freight and the MU-2A valve to lead or dead. After that's all done, you can start driving the locomotive. The setup is a little different in the AC4400CW. For starters, the reverser handle is already inserted and can't be removed. To configure the brakes, you have to go to the integrated function display and press the grey button under the yellow F1, then press F3, F4 and F6. Press F8 to return to the normal menu, and lastly, you'll need to flip the generator field switch, which is located below the control desk to the left of the driver's seat. I didn't read any instructions or play through any tutorials for setting up the AC4400CW. Instead, I worked it out based on my experience with the EMD locomotives. The trees on the distant hills look pretty bad in some cases, to the point where it's giving me flashbacks to Rivet Games' Arosa line, but on the whole, I think the scenery on Sandpatch Grade is surprisingly good for a route this old. I particularly like the detail immediately surrounding the crossing at Ellerslie, a waypoint that shares its name with a railway station on the Auckland suburban network. My favourite bit of detail on this route is the pair of chassis system cabooses, or should that be caboose, on display at Hindman. Now if only we could get a chassis-era route in TSW as well, complete with locomotives like the EMD GP30, GE B30-7, GE U25B, EMD NW2, and that one EMD GP40-2 that was painted gold. Part of me thinks that the nearest we'll ever get to proper chassis system stock in TSW is the ugly ES44AH Heritage Unit number 1973, assuming Dovetail will ever make any more CSX content for the game. I say Dovetail because, as mentioned earlier, I'm a bit wary of high iron simulations, and it looks like they're the only US-based third-party developers currently making TSW add-ons. I just hope that a better developer comes along to make US content, or that Dovetail and HIS can get their shit together and ramp up their quality control. That is, of course, assuming that Dovetail has any kind of QC department to begin with. In closing, I would go so far as to say that Sandpatch grade is, in my opinion, one of the better US freight routes. If you're a TSW player who's interested in this sort of route, I would recommend getting SPG over the likes of Sherman Hill, Cajon Pass, and the Clinchfield Railroad, simply because SPG has a bit more service variation, a busier timetable, especially when compared to Clinchfield, and a better motive power selection, even though one of the CSX locomotives is sold separately. However, the route is let down somewhat by the absence of Amtrak's Capital Limited passenger train, not to mention the poor quality trees on some of the distant hills, and the terrible horns on all CSX locomotives bar the Stealth SD40. With the hills and valleys all dotted with trees, not to mention all the little line-side details, I find the scenery on Sandpatch grade to be better than some of the more recent US routes, which is a bit ironic, without referencing Alanis Morissette. Now that I've reviewed the Cumberland to Rockwood route, I've essentially finished covering all the routes in my collection that I actually wanted to review. Going forward, and with the exception of old routes that get remastered, my attention will shift to new add-ons as they're released, or once I can get them at a reasonable discount. Or in the case of the London Overground North London line, when the Richmond extension is finally released. As for where I'd rate Sandpatch grade, I think it deserves a 6 out of 10, and if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win a small insect that starred in a sitcom with Rowan Atkinson, Tony Robinson, and Hugh Laurie. It's Stephen Fly.